What's up, YouTube family? Lou here with another Godlike Collectibles video. A lot going on YouTube right now. Midlife Cards came out with that video, and it looks like the hobby's in a frenzy right now. You know what I mean? Mike, baseball collector, made a comment about SGC and it not lasting, and now all of a sudden we got collectors freaking out a little bit. Making emergency videos, and and it's funny because even though Mike says that he thinks that SGC is probably going to be around maybe another 18 months or so, I don't think that's true. I think they're going to be around. They've been around so long already, and they've been known for their vintage cards. But what I'm noticing, though, in the hobby is that everybody is so concerned with these grading companies, whether they're going to be around, what's going to happen to my slabs, like to my card value, if they go out of business and all this other stuff. And, and I get it, to a certain degree. I've been that type of collector that I don't really care about the monetary value. So for me, it's hard to understand that point of view because I don't collect in that way. And my thing is, it kind of goes back to Mangini's point. Are we collecting slabs or are we collecting cards? Because when you really look at it, people are really freaking out about this thing, and they're making complaints about PSA, that they're this, they're that they don't grade good, they give the wrong grades, and this and the other, and that we have to do something about it. But the problem is that the only way to do something about it is to stop sending in our cards to get graded with them. The problem is that's not going to happen. So the only way to stop something, is to stop using that service. But people are going to keep sending cards in. Why? Because there's so many people in the industry that are flipping cards and looking to make money off of the cards, that they're going to send the cards to get graded. So these guys are going to keep making money, and they're not going to go anywhere. Brent Richards made a good video that I watched last night about PSA as well. He was showing all the defects on the cards, and they're getting high grades when they should be getting lower grades, and then the lower grade cards should be getting higher grades. And but like I said, that in order to stop that issue is to stop using the service. But nobody's going to stop using the service. Why? Because they love the way their cards look in these slabs. People are going to keep buying PSA. People are going to keep buying SGC. Why? Because they like the way they look. Now, me personally, I do think that vintage cards look better in an SGC slab. But at the same time, it's like, what if these companies never even existed? Are we going to say that half of these collectors are not going to collect anymore because they can't put them in slabs? And these are the things that I start thinking about. People are getting so riled up about the grading companies that it's getting to a point where we're seeing that people only want to buy a card if it's in a PSA slab. They only want to buy a card if it's in an SGC slab. They could see the same card in a PSA slab, beautiful condition, but they'll pass on it because it's not in an SGC holder, and vice versa. You can see a beautiful card in an SGC holder, but because you're, having your PSA set registry, or because you want all your collection in a PSA, you won't buy the card. And to me, that's absurd. It's crazy. I'm going to look at it as, if I see the card that I want and it's in great shape, I'm going to buy it, no matter what the slab is. And even if I have to get it ungraded, then I buy it ungraded and I get it raw. Why? Because it's about the card. It's about me getting the card, owning the card. And I think people are losing the focus of what we are. Are we collectors of the cards? Or are we collectors of the slabs? And that's the problem. The fact that people are reacting in this manner because they're scared that SGC is going to go out of business, or the whole monopoly thing of, PSA running the whole industry and not having any competitors, there's one way to solve the problem. Stop getting your cards graded and just collect the cards. Old school. And that's why I admire a lot of collectors like Jake, Legends Never Die, and Drew, Vintage Legacy. They get raw cards, and that's how they collect. They're not worried about what slab is in. They're not worried about none of that stuff. They just want the card. And I think we're losing the focus of, the whole point of this. It's like everybody, wants to show off their cards if they're in these beautiful slabs. But if they weren't in the slabs, would we still show them off? And I get it. A lot of people want the slabs for authentication purposes. They want the slabs for, because they want the museum quality look. But you know what, man? For years, we have been putting our stuff in top loaders, in semi-rigids, or now we have even one touches that we could put them in to make them look good. We could put them in Mag Pros, Pro modes. There's so many things that we can do now to make the cards look good that they don't have to be, slabbed up. Now, granted, you can see I have graded cards. I have probably over 100 graded cards, but I also have thousands of raw cards. Perfect example. I have on this table a bunch of different slabs, but I also have top loaders and everything. And I buy the card because I want the card. For example, I got this Don Mattingly, right? 84 Flair. Beautiful card. And it looks great in the SGC holder. But if I would have found this same card in a PSA, or if I would have found it raw, in the great condition that it's in, I still would have bought it. It wouldn't have mattered. CGC, which was CSG. Look at this. I ended up buying them in two different slabs. Why? Because I wasn't sure that I was going to win the auction on one. So I went and I put two bids because I didn't want to lose out on either one of them, and they were going to end around the same time. I ended up winning both. But I kept them. You know what I mean? I love the way they both look because I wanted the card. It don't matter. You know what I mean? And to Brent Rich's point about PSA making mistakes. Look, I have this Don Mattingly in a Gem Mint 10. Gem Mint 10. Okay? Looks beautifully centered, right? Well, look at the back. That's not centered. So technically, this shouldn't be a 10. But it is. I don't care. You know what I mean? I still want the card. GMA. I have a GMA slab. Saquon Barkley rookie card. I wanted his rookie card, so I found it in the GMA. I found it for cheap. I picked it up. These are just things that I'm just saying that, and I have the ugly green ones, the CSGs, Ruben Sierra rookie. I wanted Ruben Sierra. You know what I mean? Here's a Ken Griffey rookie. You know what I mean? They're not in PSA and they're not in SGC. They're in CGC. I just want them. I just wanted the card. And I think we're losing the focus on it. And I get it. Everybody has their preference. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a CGC or SGC or PSA, whatever it is that you want to collect. You want to have a Frankenstein collection like me? I got all kinds of slabs back there. You know what I mean? Or if you want it to be one or the other, that's cool. I get it. But, this kind of thing that if someone goes out of business, it's like the end of the world. I don't think it is. Because the whole focus and the whole point is to have the card. And that's how I look at it. If I had a Mickey Mantle 52 tops, you think I care what holder it's in? It could be raw for all I care, as long as I have one, right? That's what it's about. Look, I got the semi-rigids. Love these cards. You know what I mean? It don't matter that they say, look, Beckett, here's a Jorge Posada rookie. Send a Beckett slab. I don't care. I love it anyway. You know what I mean? Look, I just ended up getting these cards in the mail. Bought them raw. The Sweet Strokes Alomar. Here's another one, a Pinnacle Naturals Alomar. Got this Josh Gibson. You know, the Topps Gold, number to 2024. Bought them more raw. I don't care if they're graded. You know why? Because I just wanted the cards. You know what I mean? Here you go, some one-touches. Here's a nice Tony Oliva, All-Star rookie. You know what I mean? A relic, Ellie De La Cruz. And one-touches. Don Mattingly, Flair 92, team leaders. I just love the card. You know what I mean? And I think we're losing focus. You know, because my thing is, if every single company just goes out of business, let's just say tomorrow PSA goes bankrupt, SGC goes bankrupt, every single company just goes bankrupt and they don't exist, what happens? Does that mean that every card that was ever graded is worthless now? Does that mean that the cards you have now are worthless? Do they not mean anything to you anymore because that company doesn't exist? You know, look how great these Mag Pro slabs are. You know what I mean? These are gorgeous. Beautiful. Vintage and modern cars look gorgeous in this. Look at this. Look at this refractor of Juan Gonzalez. I think, you know, we get so caught up in this grading thing, and we're the reason, collectors, we are the reason why these companies get away with what they get away with. We're the reasons why these companies are so high in demand, because we keep sending our cards in to get graded. You know what I mean? So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? It's, you know, I just want to collect the cards. I want to be able to have them in my collection. I don't care if they're slabbed or not, because if I buy them raw, I'm going to put them in my own slabs. I'm going to put them in my own top loaders and still be able to go through my boxes and look through them and enjoy the cards, display them, enjoy the cards. And I think, you know, right now it's getting to a point where we are just getting too crazy with it. Like, you know, like I said before, it doesn't matter what slab it's in. It's the card that matters. But to a lot of people, they want the monetary value. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the lines get blurry. They get blurred because we care about the monetary value rather than caring about the card itself. You know? And I get it. A lot of people want to look at it as, you know, oh, I could trade it to get a better card and I could sell it because it's in a slab and this and the other. And I get that stuff. I get those points. But at the same time, we can't have our cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? We can't come out and say, oh, and complain about these companies for getting away with what they get away with when we supply them with the cash. We supply them with the business. We keep giving them business. We keep complaining, but we keep giving them business. If I go to a restaurant and the food sucks, I'm not going back there. If the service sucks, I'm not going back there. But us complaining about it is like us going to a restaurant and the service sucked, but we keep going back there, and we keep going back there, and we keep going back there. And that's the problem. This is why PSA will continue to go forward and go forward and go forward. Why? Because in the industry, they're the top dog. Their cars go for the most money. As collectors, we need to either stop buying those cards at such high premiums to allow them, because think about it, why is PSA in such high demand? Because we continue to pay the prices that eBay puts out, or ComC, or whatever the companies are that are selling. Whatever price they put on a PSA slab, if they decide it's the same card, SGC 8, PSA 8. The PSA is going for $50. SGC is going for $30. Oh, but it's an SGC. I'd rather have it in a PSA, so I'm going to pay the $50. So guess what? That's going to continue to push PSA sales. That's going to continue to push PSA to continue to get more and more customers to get their grades, to get graded, because they are selling at a higher premium. Who's buying these cards? Us, the collectors. So we need to put our foot down and stop paying these ridiculous prices for these overpriced cards, because they're in a slab that the hobby is saying it's better. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just wanted to get it off my chest. I wanted to say something on it because I've been watching these videos the last couple days, and I heard Mike say what he said. I honestly don't think that SGC is going anywhere, because they have such a unique look to their slabs, and they have the whole vintage market. So I don't think they're gonna go anywhere. But anything is possible. Look, Beckett is still around, even though they slowed up in their sales, and they're doing way less business than SGC. So I doubt that SGC is gonna go anywhere. But like I said, to each his own. I get it. You know what I mean? Some people love the SGC slabs. Some people like the PSA slabs. Some people like the other slabs, and it's all good. That's why there's choices, right? We all have choices, and we could choose. But at the same time, we can't get upset and support these companies and forget about what it really is, what the whole thing is about, what collecting is about. It's about the cards. The hobby is about the cards, the history, you know what I mean? The stories behind the cards, the history behind the players. You know what I mean? Players that we saw play, or legends that we heard about, players from the past. That's what makes us want to buy these cards. And I think we get so caught up in this whole thing of that it has to look perfectly, in unison, and cool. If you want to collect that way, that's cool. But at the same time, you can't freak out if, a company goes under, because at the end of the day, it don't matter what company goes under. Like I said, every company could go out of business right now, and that's not going to change the way I collect. That's not going to change it's not going to change the way I buy my cards. I'm still going to buy them regardless, whether I find them raw or whether I find them slab. As long as it's a card that I'm looking for or a player that I like, I'm going to get it, regardless of the slab. Like I was showing my Roberto Alomar collection the other day, and I got a bunch of different slabs. Don Mattingly, one of my favorite players. I have PSA slabs. I got SGC slabs. I got them raw. I got them in one touches. I got them in my Mag Pros. I got them in everything. Why? Because it's about the player. It's about the cards. So let's not forget about that. Let's remember that that's what it's about. You know what I mean? And if we really want to do something, if we really want to put a stop to PSA, stop sending our cards in to get graded with them, stop overpaying for these cards, and you'll see that, things will change. But until that happens, it's not going to change. There's too many people that are submitting to them. And as long as they're making money, guess what? Those doors are going to stay open. You know what I mean? We dictate the market, the collectors. Why? Because we buy the cards. So if we're overpaying, then guess what's going to happen? They're going to keep being pushed as the top dog. So that's what I had to say. You know what I mean? And I didn't mean to offend anyone if I did. Because like I said, everybody loves to collect a certain way, and I respect everybody's way of collecting. But I also want to, just remind everybody what it's all about. It's about the cards. It's about the hobby. It's about the history of the sport, and making sure that we preserve these cards for the future collectors. You know what I mean? Because we're unfortunately all going to die one day and move on, but the collection will stay behind, and other collectors will continue to curate these cards to preserve them and keep them going for future generations. So take care. God bless. Be safe. Peace.